I am in a privileged enough space where I have gotten a lot of brushes in PR recently. For me, brushes are actually like a really important part of the makeup process. I think that having really good tools will make it really easy for you to apply your makeup. And I've gotten to try a lot of the rephr catalog. So what I'm going to do is walk you through, but kind of give you my overall thoughts on rephr and whether or not I think that they are worth it in this video. Let's just get everything out of the way and we'll kind of go brush by brush. I'm going to put the prices of the brushes on the screen for you, but we'll start with this brush. This is their 22 brush. And I believe that sometimes rephr tries to dupe brushes. And I think that this was supposed to be a dupe of the Tom Ford bronzer brush, which is like kind of the vibe it gives me. I'll pop a picture of that right here. Now that brush was really popular for bronzer for a really long time, and then Tom Ford made it in synthetic fibers as opposed to natural fibers, which is what it was originally made in. All the brushes you're going to see here are going to be natural hair brushes. They are starting to make synthetic brushes, but I have not tried any of those. And who knows if they'll send me PR after this video. So I do really like the shape of this. I have another brush that's really similar to it that we'll talk about in a moment. Unfortunately, what I have found with this brush and all of their face brushes, anything with a long hair or a longer stretch of hair, really sheds really poorly. This shed all of the time. I think every time I use it, I had shedding. I've washed these brushes a couple of times. I've been using them for a couple of months. So it's not like I haven't washed them, because a lot of times whenever you wash a brush, that'll kind of get the kinks out. Like it'll be like, okay, all of the hairs that were a little bit loose, they've been kicked out. But unfortunately for this one, it just like never happened. And what I remember whenever I originally was looking into rephr, this was the brush that I was actually the most interested in. And I actually chose not to buy this one and went with the one from Sonia G. So this is from Sonia G, and it is the Jumbo Bronzer brush. And this is also natural hair. They might be different types of hair. I'm not that well versed in brushes, and I don't know that I really want to be, but all around, I do think that the Sonia G brush is just more impressive. They both worked well. I'm not saying that this is like the worst brush I've ever used to apply bronzer. It surely isn't, but everything about this is appealing to me a little bit more. I like the shape of the handle. I do believe rephr has like different handle shapes. I actually do not like these rounded shaped bottoms. I actually feel like they make it really hard to use the face brushes and angle them. I'm not really sure what it is, because, and also they're a little bit shorter. Like their handles are a little bit shorter. Someone tried to say that I had mini brushes from rephr. I do not believe that is the case. I think this is the full-size brush. I just think it is like the alternative handle. I'm not really sure. All I know is that this is what mine looks like. So everything about the Sonia G is just a little bit better. I actually like that the Sonia G is a little bit thinner, meaning like it is the same thing in theory where it blossoms out from the ferrule, but I just like the shape of this just so much better. It's actually a lot denser than this one from rephr, which I would not have guessed, because I feel like this puts on bronzer so much more smoothly, and I don't even have to care about how much I pick up in this bronzer brush. I do have to like pay a little bit more attention about how much I pick up with this one. I wouldn't recommend this particular brush from rephr. I was using it as a bronzer brush. Some of these I'm not actually sure what they were supposed to be used for. I'm just going to tell you what I was using them for. What I will be doing as we go through this video, I will be decluttering some of them. That doesn't mean I'm going to be decluttering all of them. It's not that bad, but I'm not going to be keeping all of them, and I will reach for this one over and over again. What I will say is having a plethora of brushes right now, if I am using them all in rotation consistently and I'm cleaning them all at the same time, hate that. That's a lot of brushes to clean and I don't like it. So I would rather keep it to like a few of my favorite brushes. And this bronzer brush from Sonia G really knocks the rephr one out of the water. So I'm just going to declutter this and pass on to hopefully someone who will enjoy it a lot more than I did. Since we started with face brushes, we will continue with face brushes. So this is the number 5 brush. I believe it's like kind of just like a general face product brush. I like the shape of it. I think that it applied blush really beautifully. Again, just like with the bronzer brush, I had to be pretty careful about how much product I was picking up on the brush to make sure it was going to diffuse the product beautifully. But I really, really like this. And I feel as though that I did not have as much shedding with this brush as I had with the 22 brush. Even though it is also a face brush, it still did shed a little bit. And it just ultimately isn't my favorite blush brush I've ever used. Here are some alternative blush brushes that I have used and liked as opposed to this. Now, these are all ones that I would use with powder brushes, except for this center one. I would use it for creams or powders. It doesn't actually really matter. I like it for either application method. But first here we have from BK Beauty the 112 brush. What I like about it is how small it is. And while it's like an angled brush that you might like mostly associate with contour, for me, it just applies the blush right where I want it, and I really like the control it gives me. And then for this brush, which is the Sephora Collection number 99, I don't know if they make this shape anymore, but I actually think this is really multi-purpose. I use it for cream blush, cream highlighter, and I will also use it for powder blush if it's clean. I like that angles on this. I like that it's flat. And like this actually isn't that far off from it. It's just like a little fluffier. But again, I like the precision that this brush offers. Now this is no longer a brush that Sephora Collection has, but I'm showing you because you might be able to find another brush like it. I've not found one yet, but I have received comments from other people who have this brush that they also really like it for blush. It is not super densely packed, and it's kind of like a stippling brush, but not one like you would associate with like applying foundation or something like that. It's just so soft to the touch right up until there. That's where the density really starts. So if you have a super pigmented blush that you really like, this is the brush that I use for that. It's more of a specific scenario kind of brush. It also has that feature. It's not really an angle brush. It kind of like is designed to like hug the high point of your cheek, which is where I put blush. So I really like it for that. I assume this could also work for highlighter, but I do not want that much surface area covered in highlighter. But if you've not thought about a blush brush looking like this, I'm just going to put that in your ear. I don't know an alternative to this brush. I'm sad that Sephora doesn't make it anymore. This is also another brush that I would use for really pigmented powder blushes. This is the Sonia G Soft Cheek. I mostly use this for highlighter, but whenever I encounter a blush that's a little bit too pigmented, I also like to apply with this. It's just super soft and it doesn't pick up a ton of product. It makes it much easier to disperse along the cheek. And then I have this. This is now discontinued, but it's another Sonia G product. It's the Sonia G Lotus Cheek. They don't make this style anymore, but it's also one I prefer over this. And as you can see, that's 5 blush brushes I already have, and this is just not the standout for me. So I will also be decluttering this brush. This is the number 30 brush. I don't like this one. This is what I use to powder my face. It's kind of shaped like a 3-dimensional broom. So it has the same shape no matter how you turn the brush, perfectly round, and that's what it looks like from the top. It is very loosely packed, which I think makes it really great for picking up powder. This brush, there was not one time I used it where it did not shed on my face. And I don't know if it's because of the shape of it and how long the hairs are on it, but oh my God, it just sheds so much. I just solely don't recommend this to you based on it shedding on me every time. It was so annoying to pull the hairs off my face, especially if I'm powdering my face and I use a lot of cream products. So I'm putting this on top of like maybe cream products that haven't set down all the way, and it was just getting stuck in it all the time, and it just wasn't doing a very good job powdering my face. I would recommend almost any other powder brush over this one. Like, I do not like this brush. I do not recommend this brush. This is the rephr 31, and this is a foundation brush, and it is a stippling foundation brush, so I didn't clean my brushes in order to do this review. There's longer hairs, and then there's like more densely shorter hairs inside of it, and it is at an angle. This made every foundation I used with it streak. Every one. Thin formulas, thick formulas, skin tints, like anything I used this with, it would always leave it streaky. And so I had to just do a lot more blending. And that just meant that more product was getting stuck inside of the hairs on this. I think overall, in my opinion, if you're gonna buy a foundation brush, I would buy a synthetic foundation brush. If you are going to go the natural hair route, I would at least go with a dual fiber, so something that has like a mixture of synthetic and natural hairs, because this just like wasn't it. This, however, did not shed on me like the other things did, so I don't know why this one wouldn't shed when it was directly interacting with creams. I just think that you should go with a synthetic fiber brush. That's my personal opinion. You might disagree. You might have had different experiences, but I wouldn't recommend this to apply foundation just with the streakiness and formulas that I know that aren't streaky with other brushes, because I do prefer to apply foundations with a brush. So that's really important to me. So I'll show you a couple alternatives to this brush. I'm pulling a lot of like BK and Sonia G. This is just in this category. Those are the brands that I reach for the most for the things we've talked about so far. From Sonia G, this is the Jumbo Base Brush. And it is one of those ones that is like angled a little bit, and it's very, 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 very dense. I love this brush. I have two of them because whenever it gets dirty, I want to still have one available to me to use. And then when they're both dirty, that's normally the time that I clean my brushes. Or it used to be before I had so many brushes. Now I can kind of go a longer time. But this is a really, really beautiful brush. And it applies kind of like anything just as beautifully as the other thing. So just like thicker formulas, thinner formulas, it just applies them really, really beautifully. The same can be said for both of these BK Beauty brushes. I have the 101 and the 109. Now, the 101 is kind of viral on TikTok right now. I only know that because I started getting a lot of TikToks promoting this in my feed recently. And what I like about it even more than the Sonia G, I like how big it is. A lot of people will say the Sonia G Jumbo Base is a really big foundation brush. It's not bigger than this. This is huge, but it is the same idea. Angle on the side, incredibly densely packed, and works beautifully with all formulas. But I will say this versus the Sonia G, which the Sonia G has both natural and synthetic fibers in it. This is just a synthetic fibered brush. This brush can go longer between cleaning than the Sonia G, and I think that's just because it's synthetic. The BK 109 is just the mini version of the large BK. I tend to use these more for blushes and cream cheek products. Like that's what I use it for, but I have a rather large face, so I will use this for foundation, and then I will use this for other things. But I know other people who have smaller faces than me that really like this, so I would recommend any of those three over this one from rephr, and I am going to declutter the rephr one. Are you wondering when I'm going to be nice to rephr yet? It'll happen. So next up, this is a fan brush from rephr. It's their number 20. I don't use fan brushes very much at all in my makeup application. I have really kind of moved away from powder highlighters, and I don't know if I've been watching old videos of Hannah Louise Poston whenever she was earlier on in her YouTube career recently, just kind of as a comfort watch, because I've just needed a lot of comfort recently. Imagine. I don't know if it's maybe whenever you hit your like mid-30s that you're just like, I'm all about cream products. I'm more into cream products, but I do like this. I haven't really had the issue of it shedding on me. So what I'm gonna do, which I'm really excited to do actually, is I have a Morphe fan brush, and I am going to declutter my final Morphe brush. I think this is the last Morphe brush in my collection. It's going away. It's going away forever. Goodbye. And I will keep the rephr brush. I only have a couple more face brushes from rephr, or like larger brushes, I think designed for the face. This is the 18 brush, and I believe this is like a cheek brush, but I think mostly designed for a highlighter. And I don't like it for a highlighter. I don't like it for powdered highlighter because this is too dense and it picks up too much highlight. So if you like a really strong cheek highlight from powder, then you might like this brush. But for the way that I like to do my makeup now, this is not really it for what my preferences are. And what I will say is I think a lot of the highlighters I currently have are highlighters that are really blinding and need to be babied when I put them on my cheek because I just don't want them to be so bold. Yeah, this just isn't for me. And like I said earlier, I would sooner go for the Sonia G Soft Cheek over this. And you might be saying like, well, that has just as much hair. It has like even more hair, but it's much less densely packed. And this is kind of just like thoroughly dense all the way through. And whenever I sweep this on my cheek, it just sweeps a lot less on than this does. It's just too dense. It's just not for me. So I'm going to declutter this one. This is the last face brush I have. It's the 17 brush, and I actually am not really sure what it's supposed to be used for. So what I kind of use it for was for like cream cheek products, so cream blushes, and I blended out my contour with it. It just didn't do it for me, much like the foundation brush. Like it got the job done, but I think it was always more work than with my preferred brushes. So it's like a flat kabuki kind of styled brush, but it's like really small. Like I wouldn't call it a kabuki brush, but it's like in that vein a little bit, just like a smaller version of it. So I think if you have a smaller face, you probably could use this as a foundation brush, and it's not stippling like the other foundation brush I talked about. So this might work a little bit better as far as like controlling streakiness, but it's not for me. I'll show you what I like to use for that kind of thing. So if you prefer it to have like this more flat top style. You might like the Sonia G mini base. These are designed for cream products. This is again a mix of synthetic and natural hairs in this brush, and I think it works really well to blend things out. It does pick up a little bit too much product for me sometimes, so oftentimes if I'm using this with a cream product, I pounce it on the back of my hand a little bit to get some of the product off before applying to the cheek. But I don't have to do this with the BK109, and like I showed you before, it has a little bit of that angle. And because it's purely synthetic hairs, I just think it works better with creams and liquids. So this would be what I would choose even over the Sonia G. But I like the Sonia G. I pick it up sometimes to do that, but I would never pick this one, so I am going to declutter it. And then this is, I think, a concealer brush. It is the number 32. It's an angled brush. Just to kind of repeat what I said about the foundation brush, it's like everything about the foundation brush I would say is the same. There is something about these brushes that I felt whenever I was blending out cream and liquids that it just like took a lot longer than it would with the other products I would use. And I am finding that this shape of concealer brush is just not my preferred type of concealer brush. I'm going to show you what I've been using. It's from BK Beauty. This is by far my favorite concealer brush I've ever owned. So it's kind of shaped like that blush brush I showed you earlier that had a little bit of like that triangular top, but this is also angled like those foundation brushes too. And I just find that this perfectly blends out under the eye for me, and the way that my face is shaped, it's just a beautiful brush. So this is a collaboration with Angie Hot and Flashy. It's the A506, and honestly, I have some other concealer brushes. This, in my opinion, is the concealer brush that everything else would have to beat. In fact, like, I'm not sure I'm going to keep all of my other concealer brushes whenever it gets down to like making my perfect brush set. But for now, I still am kind of like playing around with all of my brushes. I'm going to declutter the 32 brush. So then I have the 33 brush, which I've used both for concealer and for eyeshadow. I prefer it, I think, for concealer over the last brush we just talked about. And I think the last time I used it, it was for concealer. I think the natural fibers don't take to creams and liquids as well. It worked well enough for eyeshadow, but if I'm using a packing brush, which is like what I would kind of use this for, I would want it to be denser. Now, I have been surprised recently by a packing brush that is really soft and it actually does a really good job, but this really didn't do anything for me. My eyelids are pretty small actually, so this would just be a little bit big to like sweep something over my eyelid. I almost just put it to my eye as if you could see me. It's just a little too big for that, so it doesn't really serve a purpose. So like a packing brush that I would use would be more something like this Wayne Goss 18 brush. This is an old Wayne Goss brush. I have not really looked at his new stuff. I do want to try them before I feel like I've made my decision on my final brush set, but as of right now, this is what I would use to like do the same thing that this would do with an eyeshadow, and you just see how much smaller it is. And it might be just designed for concealer, but you know, if you use some things in different ways, you might like find a new use for them. I'm gonna talk about all of these together. So I have the 27, the 15, the 16. Oh, I have two of the 15. I don't know how that happened. And I also have the 13. And so these would be their offerings as far as blending brushes go. So that's the 27. I believe that is the biggest one. And I do believe that it is less pointed up here than something like the 16 brush, which stays kind of pointy at the end, but they're kind of the same size. The 15 brush is kind of just a smaller version of the 16. And then this one is just a really small little blending brush. Probably would be really good for someone who has hooded eyes. I don't like these blending brushes. I don't like them at all. They've made every formula I work with really hard to blend. And these are formulas that I've been using for years. So I've been using Natasha Denona eyeshadows for years. I've been using Viseart eyeshadows for years. And the way it blends them out is just, I don't like it. I think that normally natural fibers pick up less pigment, but that has not been my experience with these. Like, I feel like these pick up a lot of product and then it makes it harder for me to blend. I've heard that it's the other way around, that natural fibers pick up more product. So that's been my experience with these, but that has not been my experience with other natural hair brushes. When I look at these brushes, they look an awful lot like the old Wayne Goss brushes, which I have a full set of. So here are some of the old Wayne Goss brushes. They have a lot of the same shapes, And these blend my eyeshadows so much more effortlessly than these rephr ones ever did. These are the old Wayne Goss brushes. I want to make it very clear that I'm speaking about something that one cannot purchase anymore unless you are buying it secondhand. I would get frustrated using the rephr brushes, and I would always, almost always, pull out my Wayne Goss brushes to finish the job because these just wouldn't do it for me. I don't know what it was. I do think that they just picked up too much product and they made it really hard for me to blend. That is not the sign of a good blending brush for me. That's not what's going to work for me. And I didn't really care for these. A lot of people swear by them. So, you know, take my opinion with a grain of salt. I'm not trying to be contrarian. I just have tried better. And I would rather use the ones that work better for me. And if I would have bought these, I would have been disappointed with them. Then I have the rephr 12 brush. And I'm actually not really sure what they would say that this brush is for. But I'll tell you what I like to use it for. And I really actually like this brush. I like to use this brush for cream eyeshadows and sparkly potted shadows, which is a category of eyeshadow that I have a lot of. I like using it with the Phytosurgeons eyeshadows. I like using it with the Victoria Beckham lid lusters. I have found that this is really nice for, instead of putting my finger in those kinds of products, which is what I would use otherwise, I find that the density of this is perfect to pick those up and blend it out of my eye. So that's what I really like it for. And I don't actually really have another brush that is shaped like this or that I really like to use in those kinds of formulas. I just kind of always default to fingers. It has been very nice to not use my fingers in those products because a lot of times I do my eyeshadow first, and then what happens is I end up getting sparkles all over my fingers, and I'm blending primer and maybe sometimes foundation or a skin tint, and then I have sparkles all over my hands and the sparkles all over my face. So I've actually really, really like this. And if you have a lot of that type of product and you are sick of using your fingers, or you have like acrylics, or you use press-ons and you really can't get your finger, the pad of your finger into that kind of product, I would recommend this for that. I also love blending out cream shadow sticks with this. It works really well for that. So I am going to keep this one actually. Next up, I have the 28 brush. I don't really use brushes shaped like this, if I'm being quite honest with you. This is like a better size paddle brush, and I actually don't really have that many paddle brushes, but occasionally I'll reach for one. So I didn't hate this, but I didn't love it. It's really what it boils down to. So right now, I think I'm actually going to keep it, but I feel like this brush shape is a little bit a dime a dozen. I don't think you need to buy it from rephr. I've used cheaper ones that work just as well as this, so I would say that this is not the kind of brush that I think that you need to spend this much money on. If I'm, like, I would say that, you know, you could go with an e.l.f. one or a Real Techniques or even like a Morphe one, depending on what your budget is. I just don't think you need this kind of from rephr. This is the rephr 29, and it's like kind of like an eyeshadow smudging brush. It's so small. So what I will say for rephr is I actually think that they make some very small brushes really impressively. Like, look at how small that little smudger is. I feel like when other brands release eyeshadow smudging brushes, they're always so big. So here's the one from BK Beauty, kind of just to show you for scale. Look at how much bigger it is. So I actually really like this. It's not my favorite shape for like smudging out eyeliner, but I think this will be a good tool for me to have in my arsenal. I've never encountered a brush this small that is like to do this kind of thing. So I find that really impressive. And I think that also it would be really easy for people who normally find that those bigger eyeliner smudger brushes, like I feel like this like would alleviate the stress of using something bigger like that to those people. So I am actually going to hold on to this one. And kind of keeping in the theme with the last brush, again, another smaller brush. This is the 34. It's a very, very, very small liner brush. And yeah, it works really well. It didn't work well with the last formula I tried it with, but I have used it with other liquids. I just love how small it is. It's gorgeous. Because I find that other eyeliner brushes tend to be shaped like this. So they're much longer and they're always frayed out at the end. That's always been my experience. So I am actually going to declutter this old one and hold on to the rephr one because I would sooner use this over that other one. Look how small. It's so cool. And then I'll finish with these two. They're kind of the same shape, but just a little bit of a different size. It's the 3 and the 23. The 23 is the smaller one. These are just really small pencil brushes. And when I'm doing smudgy eyeliner, these come in so clutch. I have so many of the satin kajal liners from Victoria Beckham at this point, and instead of using the smudger on the other side of the Victoria Beckham liners, I like to use these because these don't pull on my eyelids like the smudgers do, and I love when things don't pull on my eyelids, and these just blend them out so perfectly. And so if you love smudgy liner and you haven't found something to buff them out with, I highly recommend these. I've not used pencil brushes this small before. Even the bigger one is a lot smaller than any other pencil brush I've used. And so I really, 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 really am a big, big fan of these. And like, shout it from the rooftop, love them for smudging out eyeliner. That's what I use them for, so maybe you could find another use for them. But for me, that's like 100% the case that I use them for. I use the bigger one whenever I'm working on like the outside of my eye, if I'm just like smudging out a wing. And then on top of like my eyelash line, I like to use the smaller one, the 23. So I adore these. I think they really hit the nail on the head. Of the brushes I was gifted, these are the ones that I didn't think were worth my time or money. So I'm getting rid of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So 13 of them didn't work out for me. Like I said, a lot of people really like their blending brushes. They're not for me. And honestly, I wouldn't recommend any of their face brushes besides the blush brush, the number 5. And other ones I wouldn't buy. And these are the brushes that I'm keeping. So I'm keeping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of their brushes. As you can see, the smaller detailed brushes are a big favorite of mine. This one I'm keeping mostly just so I can get rid of that Morphe brush out of point of pride reasons, but it's a good fan brush. I just find that fan brushes are a bit of a non-event for me, and I think most people at this point, but you might love a fan brush. So maybe you would like that more than me, but I just think that the small detailed brushes are really what rephr excels at. And here's what I'm going to say to you. Rephr runs sales throughout the year, upwards of 40% off. And they also have this thing where you can review things and buy things 50% off. And I'm not always sure which brushes end up in the concept store and which ones don't. So I just wouldn't recommend you buying a rephr brush for any reason at full price, because they are priced pretty expensive, like sometimes rivaling the price of Sonia G brushes, which is like a luxury brand, if you're not getting them at a discount. And I just don't think these brushes are worth it not on a discount. I think these ones are worth it, but you can wait. If you don't have brushes shaped like this and you have not had them for a long time and you're interested in them, you can wait till rephr has a sale. A lot of influencers will post whenever rephr is doing 40% off. I don't do that on my channel. That's not the nature of my channel. I don't like to remind people about sales because I just am not trying to promote consumerism on my channel. We're not going to get into the nature of all of that. But what I'm saying is just wait for a sale. Wait for a sale. Keep your eyes peeled. You can also join their mailing list. They don't email a lot. They only really email when they have a new launch. They put things in the concept store and when they're running a sale. As I'm editing, which is the night before I'm posting this, the concept store is open. I don't know if it will still be open when this video goes live. So everything is marked down if you are willing to do a review within 60 days of receiving your product. So I put the full prices on the screen because I just want you to know how much they think that these brushes should cost. But right now, I think a lot of them are 40% off if you're willing to give them a detailed review. So check that out if you're interested in that. They don't email that much. So I do want to thank Tom at rephr for hooking me up with all of these beautiful brushes for me to try, even though that they weren't mostly not perfect for me. I'm really grateful that I got to try them and be able to tell you about them. And maybe they can use some of the things I said as feedback to improve things in the future, because the shedding on the face brushes is a lot. It's like so much. It's like I don't know what's going on. And the other thing I will say about rephr is that they do listen to feedback quite well and they improve stuff all the time. And they also, I feel like, release brush shapes that aren't out on the market because they're listening to what people are asking for. And I feel like a lot of brands don't do that. But that wraps up the video. I will have an affiliate link down below if you do choose to buy any of their brushes on my recommendation. Feel free to use that. You don't have to. I don't have an affiliate code with them, so I don't have any way for you to save money. Like I said, wait for a sale. wait for them to be in the concept store. Just keep your eyes peeled. But if you are new to my channel and you're not yet subscribed, I would love to have you subscribe. My channel is mostly about loving my makeup collection as it currently is, while being a little bit cynical, well, a lot cynical about new makeup releases and just kind of cynical about brands in general. So if you're into that kind of thing, I would love to have you subscribe. Make sure to like this video. I'm on Patreon and I have channel memberships. I do additional content there. There's no pressure to join those. It's just if you would like to. So feel free, or if don't, that's up to you. And that wraps up the video. Remember to follow your host and you'll find me. Go forth. Tits out. They are not worth it. What are you laughing at? I figured it would help you remember to do it.